All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to episode of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. As you know, this week we will be talking about the film industry and the impact of social distancing and the various phases that are being implemented to kind of ease the reopening of businesses, but particularly with movie theaters and what that would look like. As you know, I'm not going to be on the show by myself. I do have a couple of guest hosts joining me this week. So let me introduce each of them. First off, I have Mark Searby. Let me bring him on. Here we go. Hello, Mark. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So Mark Searby, to introduce him, he is the film critic of BBC Suffolk as well as Phoenix FM. Known Mark for a little while, thanks in no part to con culture and all that jazz. Aside from Mark, let me introduce my next guest as well. We have Aaron Couch. Bring him on as well. What's going on, Aaron?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Excellent. So Aaron, he's the editor of Hollywood Reporter's Heat Vision. So guys, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. So here we are. Here we have in the film industry. Film industry is in a very weird place with everything that's been going on. Everyone's been living under a rock. We've been, for the past couple of months, been dealing with this thing called social distancing that has affected every part of our lives, particularly, one of my favorite pastimes. And of course, I'm assuming one of your favorite pastimes, which is going to the movies and enjoying, that experience. Now, the thing that's interesting in the past few months is all the various impacts that it's had on the industry, at large, and it's been all types of things. Just going down the list, just the idea of how film sets have been affected. You have a lot of people that are out of work, unfortunately, that would be on film sets, whether it's actors, directors, writers, a lot of the crew. It's affected because of that. You also have the impact of how it's affected the studios themselves, where a lot of studios and then the employees that you have at studios are now unfortunately being affected in terms of their jobs as well. We've seen interesting things that have come as a result of this, where we've had drive-in theaters, just by virtue of what it's able to accomplish, see a rise, which we didn't really expect, but by nature of everything that's been going on, has seen a rise. And even lastly, just with the relationships between movie theaters and studios and how that's been impacted. So, can you guys, with each of you, I guess I'll start with you, Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
It's just a huge, unprecedented times. I keep saying these words as well. That's the thing, unprecedented times. We've never experienced anything like this at all. There's so many questions we've got. The first question, certainly for me, as a film lover, as a film critic as well, and for you guys as well, and for everybody watching, is when can we get back to watching films on the big screen? That's the thing. Now, as you said, we've got drive-ins. That's great, but you've got to drive. That's a bit difficult if you don't drive, I've got to say. So, getting back into theaters, that's the big question. It really is. We are hopeful here in the UK of it opening next month. It seems to be the same with yourselves over there as well, with certain limitations, obviously. My concern is these limitations that they're talking about, 2-meter distancing rules between seats. You're sort of sat where nobody's around you. Personally, nobody around me sounds fantastic. I love that idea. But how are theatres going to survive if you're only 30% full? And especially independents. You know, I love independent cinema because they don't just show the blockbusters; they show some classic films as well, and they're just fantastic to be with. So, you know, that's the first question I have to wonder: where does this go? You know, there was a poll taken of independent cinemas here in the UK by the main body, and over 50% said there is no chance that they can open with the 2 meter distancing in place and continue to survive. So a lot of them are saying we can't open until September at the earliest, which is hugely heartbreaking. I mean, I don't want to see any theatres go under at all, but yeah, you know, you just don't know how it's going to unfold, and this is the worrying time, really. You know, the other subject you were talking about there, Brandon, about how film studios start ramping up their production again. You know, I will leave that to Aaron on that one, because he will know probably a bit more than me. But it's all hand in hand. This is the thing. One thing can't start without the other, but the other thing can't start without the other. And it is deeply, deeply troubling as a film lover, a film nerd. And I don't know. Somebody has to come out of the woodwork and say, right, this is it, guys. This is what we're doing. We're going for it. And hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, it works and everybody else follows suit. You know, I like the idea of what Tom Cruise is suggesting for Mission Impossible filming, which is to create this COVID-free village for filming. So it will be a village of 20 or 30 people all working on the film. And for 2-3 weeks, that's where you stay. And everybody gets tested and you can't go home. Great idea, because at the moment, for the next, whatever it is, 6-9 months, maybe, that's how it's going to have to be, possibly. But then you have the cost implications of that. That's one of the major factors as well. Yeah, it's difficult times. It really is.
Yeah. Aaron?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up independent theaters, because, you know, I mostly, that's a little bit of a blind spot for me. I have some that I go to in Los Angeles and I love, but I mostly focus on like the blockbusters. So I've been thinking, you know, I was surprised to learn, oh, you know, movies like Tenet, that can make its money and be fine even if theaters are half full. But I think you're totally right, Mark, you know, that, oh yeah, but it's not the big guys that'll suffer. It's the little guys. So that's great. You know, really important to keep in mind. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And yeah, I think you know, I think that COVID is going to change how, not only how movies are shot, but maybe how they are written. You know, I've heard filmmakers say, hey, we were writing a scene, big battle scene, tons of extras. The Dungeons and Dragons filmmakers were saying this recently, and we're going to cut that scene. It's going to be, you know, we're not really going to be able to have extras in our movies anymore, at least for the time being, or large scenes. So it'll be fascinating to see how the writing phase, things change even. But yeah, I know that the Tom Cruise idea, I mean, that has, from what I understand, happened on a few productions already. Children of the Corn, this horror movie, I believe, was shot in Australia and completed doing just that. And it works. So, you know, it's a little bit more expensive. It's a little bit tougher on the crew and cast to be away from their families, but that does seem to be a safe option.
Definitely. And as I said, being a couple of months in and seeing, you know, all these things, you know, come into play, and now I'm dealing with this new normal. Thankfully, recently, at least across the board, we've had a lot of instances where we have seen the slight reopening with a lot of these phases of businesses now getting a chance to come back into play. Across the board, most places at this point are pretty much in phase one. I know here in DC, we're about a couple of weeks in. I know that they were potentially talking about moving into phase two. In some cases, perhaps being this week, but might possibly get pushed by a couple of weeks. Aaron, I'm assuming at this point, I know that they were talking about possibly doing movie theaters, but I think I also saw a story that despite being given the green light, that you guys are going to wait a couple of more weeks before that comes into play. But Mark, I know that you guys are. I'm assuming a couple of weeks in, because I did take a look at like some of the protocols that you guys have, and I guess like one of the phases that you all have at this point for your movie theaters would be in phase 3 for you all. I know across the board it's pretty much phase 3 or phase 4 for movie theaters.
Yeah, that's about right for ourselves. There have been guidelines issued by all of the major theatre chains here in the UK to say, this is what we want to go for. This is what we propose to do. It has to be ratified by the government before they can do anything. They are very positive that it can happen. But, you know, we're all just sat waiting. This is the thing. It's very difficult to know. And I think for the general public at large, and I get this, I totally get it, is the worry of going back to a theatre. I think that's the thing, is that people are so worried about it that, you know, there's so much information out there, you know, can this virus be transmitted through air conditioning? And, you know, so, I mean, I was looking into this week because I know it's going to be a question that comes up a lot. And, you know, for the majority, people are saying it can't be transmitted through air conditioning, but you still have that worry about it. So it's the people who would, you know, go to the theatres maybe once a month, see the blockbuster, something like that, who will be, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to risk my life. And I get it. I totally get it. But at some point, we've got to push forward, and we've got to try and say, well, look, guys, you know, some of us went to the theatre on the first week and we're still okay. We're still doing okay. And we got to see Tenet. We got to see Tenet on the big screen. But, you know, it's just another worry. It's difficult to know. But it's, yeah, what's the answer? Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. What are your thoughts on it, Aaron? Based on like the recent news that you guys are going to wait a bit longer.
Yeah, we don't have any real new movies coming out till July anyway.
Sure.
So I think that makes sense. Looking at the guidelines, I mean, I do appreciate how seriously they're taking them with, you know, space seating, everybody wearing a mask. So I personally feel a little bit nervous, but you know, if you look at the science, hopefully it's based on science, and you know, I do think it's possible that these are going to be safely done. It's just kind of like Mark was saying, even though you know on paper this is safe, are you going to have a little bit of a fear? You know, I mean, for me personally, I've been waiting for Tenet for a really long time, but I've had the thought, you know, maybe I do go to a drive-in theater for that. But again, a drive-in theater isn't as good as the you know, it's not at all the same experience. So it's really going to be a reckoning for me, I think, deciding, do I go see Tenet or not? I might try to go to a smaller theater in kind of a less densely populated area or something. I don't really know, because I would really like to see it, and I feel like with these guidelines, it could be safe. So we'll see. I don't know. What do you think, Brandon?
I don't know. And actually, I'm going to put up a comment. Sylvia, you're absolutely right. Hit it right on the mark, just like what Mark was saying. Some folks, even despite a lot of these guidelines, they still may not even be in a place where they feel comfortable to do it. But I feel it's going to be interesting, because in lieu of, you know, all the logistics of trying to reopen theaters and reopening sets, just keeping in mind like what it will look like if we're in a situation where, I know in some instances they're saying movie theaters would only be able to operate in 25% capacity. Okay, so what is that going to look like? You know, if you're getting concessions, you know, what is that going to look like with the amount of staff that they're going to be able to have, you know, do concessions and be able to, you know, put on the films themselves? Does that mean that a lot of people are going to, you know, playing double and triple duty because they only can have, you know, but so many employees in the theater? Also, you know, in lieu of the amount of folks that you have in the theater, will it basically snuff out kind of like what we were kind of touching on in the beginning? Will it basically snuff out certain films that we get to see because, larger studio films can kind of bite the bullet of having a lower capacity for their films versus perhaps independent film, because the theater, perhaps they're only willing to have the studio film because they feel that even at 25%, they're going to get more bang out of their buck in that capacity. So, it brings up all these other further questions of, how it's going to affect things, definitely. But in lieu of everything being reopened for sets themselves, and Mark, it's funny you brought up, the instance of the Tom Cruise movie. There was another guest, and sorry, do a quick plug. There was a guest, Bill Albers. Was it Bill? No, it was Jamie Kennedy. He was commenting on a project that he had done with brain fart, I feel bad. Tyler Perry, where he was saying, like, on his lot, apparently with a lot of projects that he's doing now, that's something that he's going to be implementing, is keeping them on that lot and having them tested on that lot for those projects that they do. So will we see a lot more of that? Things like that. Will it perhaps affect, what type of films we will see, based on the limitations that we have? Will it be a genre, kind of a purge of certain genres that we see based on the limitations that you have on films? Like, maybe you won't see it as many, and it sounds like a crazy thing to think about, but just by virtue of social distancing, maybe you won't see any romantic comedies, just by virtue of the fact, because, like, you can't be close to each other at all. It sounds like a silly thing, but it is a realistic thing. Or in a horror film, you don't necessarily have that limitation. You could still make an effective horror film without people being right up close to each other. So it raises all these, interesting questions that you otherwise wouldn't think about without having them in play. But with that being said, I want to kind of get into, let me put it up here, the idea of, like, necessarily, like, where do we, honestly, go from here? Because in thinking about all the where we are and the spikes that you are still hearing stories about with certain, areas because of us relaxing in various, states or places. All of these measures being relaxed as the weeks go by and as we, continue into the year. What will things look like, going forward for these sets? I touched on a couple of them, but, I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on some ideas of what you think it might look like or what may come into play, whether it's sets or even with the theaters themselves and how they operate.
Yeah, it seems like on sets, it's going to be, you're wearing a mask unless you're acting. You're not going up to the craft services table anymore. It's going to be, more sack lunch scenario sort of thing where it's that. I think it's staggered times for people when they're working, and so just a lot lower density. And I think it has to be until who knows when a vaccine comes. Hopefully next year at some point we get a vaccine. Nobody really knows, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think it'll just have to stay the course and see what things look like next month, because again, with both relaxing. Some of our states and things like that. We'll see if, are we going to have more of a spike? Certain things, we don't really exactly know what it'll look like in a month. So I guess that'll be interesting to see.
Definitely. Mark?
One thing I would say is, obviously, where do we go from here? I will say, where do we go from here? For anybody who is writing a horror film, don't write a horror film about a pandemic. We don't want to see it. We do not want to see it. Okay, we're living it. We don't want to be reliving it on the big screen at all. So please don't write that. But going back to your point there, Brandon, about horror films, actually, it's probably a good time, to be honest, to be making horror films. You think about always the final sequences of a horror film. It's always a final girl who's running away from somebody who's got a chainsaw or something like that. So yeah, exactly. This is the thing. So horror it's kind of already adapt for that. It's ready to go. I think, as you mentioned, romantic comedies go beyond that. Full-on romance, 50 Shades of Grey is not being made anytime soon now at all. However, I did read a thing that had said that maybe they can do romance films, but they will make the sex scenes via CGI. I can't think of anything worse. Who wants to see that? I mean, that just sounds disgusting already. And part of the beauty of a romance is the fact that you have that build-up of the fact that the clothes are still on. What do people look like underneath the clothes as well? And that's part of the beauty of a romance film. You think about something like Sleepless in Seattle. That hasn't got any hardcore sex scenes on it. It's not even got any softcore sex scenes on it, but it's still a very sexy film. That's the thing. So they can make these films. Okay, the kissing might be slightly different, but I'm sure they'll get around it. My concern, really, of where we go from here in terms of filming is action films. I know that they have said, we're going to use a lot more machine guns and things like that. That's fine, but we get to a point where we've seen it all before with guns and look, is Schwarzenegger shooting another 90 people or somebody? You're like, we've done that. And I always go back to what is possibly the greatest film of the past decade, which is The Raid. I
was just about to say that. Awesome.
Like the greatest action flick of the past decade, hand-to-hand combat, sensational, and yet we're probably not going to get to see anything like that for quite a while. And I think that's the worry, is that energy that we would get when you watch The Raid, or where you watch something that has that closeness to it is gone for 18 months. But it's not 18 months, because it's going to be longer, because obviously it takes the studio longer to get it out, longer to market it. So we're talking maybe 2.5, 3 years, really. So that's something that the studios have really got to drill down to and try and find what they can do in order for us to still have romance films, to still have us see whoever is making the next Raid or something like that. I mean, I'm positive that they can do it. It's just those initial tentative steps of how they get there.
I was going to say, the only thing that I can think of is if you have unless you have a film where there isn't any, there's still hand-to-hand combat, but perhaps based on the costumes, they're wearing gloves, like they have leather gloves, and they have like an entire, like the character has an entire outfit on, and they have like a mask. So maybe develop. I'm sorry, I'm writing a film for one person.
Oh yeah.
But they have, based on the circumstances of the film and the rules that you put into place, like they are in the costume, they have to wear a mask, or they have to wear gloves, and you could still pull off a action scene that way, because they aren't technically making physical contact. But it's funny you brought up the point about the romance. The only film that I can think of that would still probably fly under the circumstances that we're in now is perhaps Her. In this circumstance. So you could still, I guess you could be creative. It would take a lot of effort, but you can, I suppose you can create some type of scenario where it would still work. But yeah, just under the normal circumstances, obviously just wouldn't work. But to bring your point of what you were talking about, Mark, at the top about independent films, I'm really fascinated to see what they're going to do in a lot of these instances where you have a lot of these low budget films, because unlike what you have with a studio where you have the option of, of adding in characters or taking out characters based on blue screen, green screen, what have you. You don't really have those resources in the realm of independent filmmaking. So how is that going to affect the stories that they tell? It will really be fascinating to see.
Yeah, it's tough to know where they can go because they do have a limited budget. This is the worry, is that somebody's already written this film. It's taken them 3 years to write. It's now been greenlit. It was greenlit back in January, where everything was looking perfectly fine, and they still want to go ahead with it. Financing is there, and they think they can do something. I see a ridiculous amount of films that is about people who are just doing dialogue, a drama or a thriller where there's no running and jumping or anything. And you think that could work. But as you said, if it's an independent film, they are operating on such a tight restriction already. Then you have to put into effect the fact that they'll have to be tested as well, which costs money. It's difficult to know where to go. I mean, I imagine Aaron has some idea of what the budgets are for certain things and how they'll explode, basically.
Well, it's funny that, Mark, the thing you said, and I agree with this, is, let's not make a pandemic movie, but that seems to be a lot of the announcements and things that have come out in the last 3 months or last month are like, so-and-so wrote a pandemic movie and they're going to shoot it now, So it is, that's what I am seeing come out. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, maybe some of these will be great. They really could be, but I'm with you. I want to move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the idea of, it is really terrible for the folks that had the movie they worked on for 3 years and got financing. But I imagine on the flip side, there are people right now writing like, okay, I can write a movie that only has 2 people in it, or it's, like Tom Hardy in a car talking, that movie a few years ago. So maybe there'll be some ideas like that. But yeah, it's heartbreaking for these folks that have been working so hard and we're about to go. Yeah, I feel terrible about that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, just lastly, I know we were talking about how studio films, have a little more flexibility in terms of the resources that they have, but at the same time, this take into account what, even here in the US, even though we have a stipulation of a lot of these phases, it's really all incumbent upon each of the states. So a lot of these films, even the big budget films, are not going to see the returns that they're expecting, just by virtue of, certain states not, being at that point as other states are. Because I mean, even in LA, I feel like LA, you guys are way ahead of us in terms of where we picture, movie theaters are going to be open back here at home. So
yeah,
it'll definitely be interesting. But with that being said, guys, thank you so much for coming on. For this episode to talk about social distancing and its impact on the film industry. Can you guys tell me or tell the folks out there where they can find you, Mark?
Sure, I'm on Twitter. There's my Twitter just below there, Mark_Searby. My website is marksearby.com. Not much happens there, to be honest. It's just a standalone website. And then every week here in the UK, I'm on BBC Suffolk on a Saturday afternoon with the latest film reviews, Phoenix FM on a Friday afternoon with the latest film reviews, which has been interesting. There's no film, there are no cinemas out, but we're still getting the films, which is a whole other subject you should really talk about as well, Brandon. You need to get people on to talk about film distribution during the pandemic. It's a whole other story.
That's a good topic.
Gosh. Aaron?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Aaron Couch, and you can see our work at The Hollywood Reporter at thr.com.
All right, awesome. Last but not least, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movies and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me right there, Brandon Troy ENT. As I said, guys, thank you guys so much. And I'm really looking forward to, I'm itching, just like with my sports, I'm itching to get back into the theater. So fingers crossed that we get there sometime soon.
Thank you, Brandon.
All right, thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.